Hello, I'm filming this very late, so excuse that. I don't know if you can see this. The vision of Robert F. Kennedy. This is the father of Robert F. Kennedy, not Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running now. And you always wonder, sometimes we say, what would happen if John had stayed alive, or Robert had stayed alive, or if Medgar had stayed alive, or if Malcolm had stayed alive, or if Martin had stayed alive? And we have all their writings. I haven't read Medgar Evers' writing. I have to find out, like, read some more books on him. That's gonna be one of my things before this year ends. I'm gonna have to get some books on Medgar, really do a deep dive. Um, but these are some of Robert F. Kennedy's ideas. And looking back, and I don't know, I wasn't there. I'm only 53. But when I look back, I think I like Robert more than John. Um, and maybe it's the thing he did when he found out that Martin Luther King Jr. was dead, and he rode into the rally he was having with the black crowd and without much security, and was able to face them and say he, Martin Luther King Jr. has been killed, and tried to make them space. Yeah, but I know what you're feeling. I lost my brother, and that kind of thing I kind of like a little more. Um, but let's see, there's a section here he talks about poverty. Action, an adequate measure, can wait no longer. There are children in the United States of America with bloated bellies and sores of disease on their bodies. This is the 60s, but it's happening today. I know you're thinking, Tim, that bullshit. That's not happening today. Yeah. Whenever you hear the news say food insecurity, they're going to bed hungry. It's a fancy way of saying they're just hungry. They have cuts and bruises that will not heal correctly in a timely fashion and chronically runny noses. There are children in the United States who eat so little that they fall asleep in school and do not learn. We must act and must act now. For there is another kind of violence, slower, but just as deadly, destructive as the shot or the bomb in the night. This is the violence of institutions. This is why I can't try to get people to see indifference and inaction and slow decay. This is the violence that afflicts the poor, the poisons that poisons relationships between men because their skins have different colors. This is the slow destruction of a child by hunger and schools without books and homes without heat in the winter. This is the breaking of a man's spirit by denying him the chance to stand as a father and as a man among other men, and this too afflicts us all. This stuff is happening today. This is why everybody's flipping out. This is why people flipped out and went to the Capitol. Because for the first time, maybe in this country's existence, I don't know, you tell me, white men had to live like black men. They were losing their jobs. White women were starting to go out in the workplace. Men were staying home. Some white men made the adjustment. But suicide went up, which made me think these people would rather kill themselves than live like us, and we just live like this day in and day out, like it's just normal. But this is what's happening. This is the kind of violence. This is the kind of horror that American people are living. Way too many. We're talking 50 to 60 to 70% are living like this for no reason. No reason at all. Well, what joy is there in day that follows day, some swift, some slow, with death the only goal? Really, that's what many of our fellow citizens feel, whether they're in Appalachia or whether they're in Harlem, or whether they're the white children who live in some of these other areas where they've no future. Harlem is majority white now. And if you want to know where all those black people went, some of them sold their brownstones they bought in the '70s for cheap because nobody wanted them. They sold them for a lot of money and went down south and bought more houses. By the way, I went down south. I was down there for a while, visiting family, helping family with a medical issue. And I met some of these people who moved down south and bought these big houses, who were from New York City. Miserable. Alcoholics. That's what they did. So this whole idea that you could just move around and do better than where you came from, you have to be careful. Sometimes it works out, but selling your house for a lot and going down south because it's cheaper, sure, but where in the south? And maybe if you're older, you want a quiet life and you want to go live in the country in the south, but you need to understand something about the south. And more, this may be even true in the north. The South is run by the Klan. And another podcaster talks about this. The Klan is in the state legislature in the South, city councils in the South, and even in Columbia, South Carolina, when I was there, they had a black mayor for about 2 terms, 3 terms. They went back to a Republican white male mayor. And guess how many votes he got to become mayor? He got a little over 11,000 votes. And I don't think nobody that I knew down there had voted. So I don't know what he's doing now. Probably doing what they've always done. Making sure black people suffer. That's basically what's going on down there. Dignity and despair. And it's not like, black people suffer here too. The only difference is we act up a little more and we get things. Right? So, when the people who sold their houses left, but there were a lot of people who were renting and just got displaced and they're living on trains, living on benches. Then they had to give us shelters, and then they had to give us vouchers, and then they had to give us apartments. Because we were stretching out on trains and taking up train cars and during rush hour, and people were complaining. So you had to get us off, and that's the difference. Whereas in the South, you probably go off in the woods and you live in a hut. In the North, there's really no way to live like that. So, but we live out and say, well, you're gonna displace us? Okay, so we're gonna displace somebody else. And then it gets extreme. We're gonna push people on the tracks. We're gonna punch people in the face. We're gonna, and then the city has to act. Dignity and despair. The poor man's conscience is clear, yet he is ashamed. Shouldn't be. He feels himself out of the sight of others, groping in the dark. Mankind takes no notice of him. He rambles and wanders unheeded in the midst of a crowd, at church, in the market. He is in as much obscurity as he would be in a garret or a cellar. He is not disapproved, censured, or reproached. He is only not seen, to be wholly overlooked, and yet to know is intolerable. If Crusoe on his island had the library of Alexandria and the certainty that he should never again see the face of a man, would he ever open a volume? That's a quote by John Adams. Our housing projects were built largely without either reference or relevance to the underlying problems of poverty, unemployment, social disorganization, and alienation which caused people to need assistance in the first place. Too many of the projects, as a result, become jungles, places of despair and danger for their residents, and for the cities they were designed to save. Now, what he's saying is, yeah, what you did is you didn't deal with poverty, you just pushed people into projects. In 2024, they still haven't dealt with poverty, and they got rid of the projects. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The projects that I grew up in, it's gone. They knocked them down and built these little, quote unquote, affordable housing things, which means nothing. So that displaced more people in New York City. Columbia, South Carolina, they got rid of their projects. They got rid of what they call municipal housing or public housing in every city. Chicago, New York, Columbia, South Carolina. I'm sure even in Richmond, Virginia. I'm sure in Buffalo, New York. I'm sure they just got rid of them in every city. I don't know if LA had that version of it, but I'm sure there was public housing in LA too. But I'm not sure because LA's a little different. But I know when I tell you, I know cities that I know that I've been to. And so I like to tell people who say, oh, we've made progress. We've made progress. Now, the one progress I will say is now, and this is only recently after 2020, black people will not let white people do and say anything to us. That's true. But as far as institutional and structurally concerned, we're worse off than we've ever been. We're worse off than we were during Jim Crow. And you're saying, Tim, nah, you're going too far. In Jim Crow, we were being killed. We had to work, you worked only in black sectors because you were relegated to your side of town. So you had the black neighborhoods, the white neighborhoods, black communities, white communities, physically. This is Jim Crow we had. We had lynchings, so I said we have killings. You were relegated. But you had your own space because you were relegated based on skin color. 2024, we're still being lynched, we're still being killed. Old-fashioned ways, new ways. Hanged and shot, mostly shot and killed that way. We don't even have a neighborhood to be relegated to. We're just displaced. They treat us like we're the, not even like we're the tree in the neighborhood, but like we're the ground or the garbage cans that's sitting on the corner. This is what we're treated like. You get some people in high places, but we've always had that. You've had people in high places in slavery. This is what people don't understand. You had wealthy blacks during slave times. You had free, wealthy blacks. You had free, wealthy black slave owners. I did a course. Black soldiers in gray. Whole section. I did a whole class on black slave owners who wanted to fight on the Confederacy side to keep slavery. So, I mean, we tend to think that there was never any wealthy blacks during slave times. Of course there were. There were always a handful of blacks that did well. There's a handful of blacks that do well now. I would say the difference even then to now, a lot of those, I'm not going to say all of them because some of them were worse than the whites, but most free blacks in slavery times were abolitionists. Blacks now who do well, they don't give a shit what happened to other black people. And you could be there, you could be like people they know close to them and they're like, it's not my problem. You sleeping on the train, oh, that sucks. That's too bad, bro. See them all. But back then, at least we knew we helped each other. Hell, you had more compassion and concern in the slave quarters than you do today. So when you say progress, I don't know. But the thing is, if Robert had become president, maybe he would have steered us toward some progress. Instead, we got Richard Nixon, who did something else. Let's read this last one paragraph. Let television show Let television show the sound, the feel, the hopelessness, and what it's like to think you'll never get out. Show a black teenager told by some radio jingle to stay in school, looking at his older brother who stayed in school and who's out of a job. Show the mafia pushing narcotics. Put a candid camera team in a ghetto school and watch what a rotten system of education it really is. Film a mother staying up all night to keep the rats from her baby. Then I'd ask people to watch it and experience what it means to live the most affluent society in history without hope. Again, this could be today, you know. Sad thing. And the thing about 2024 that makes it even worse is that this we got rid of this in 2020. When people were home, they were getting the stimulus, child tax credit, extra unemployment, right? Basically getting UBIs. They were staying home. The environment was nice. In New York City, the rat population came down because there wasn't a lot of garbage and junk for them to eat. They started eating each other. They started eating people's car wires too. I had a friend that said they were driving him crazy. They were in his car just eating his wires. So all, yes, people lost people to COVID, sure. But the thing with me is black people lose people to death all the time. We've been losing people to death before COVID and since. But we had stability. And for some, well, I can understand people begged to go back. And we went back now and we're right back in the situation that he's talking about. And no politician is talking the way Robert Kennedy did. They're all acting as if we're all doing all right. We just need a little twitch here, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. But the world is good. It's insanity. It's delusion and insanity on such a level. Hit the links. And remember to try to take care of yourselves and each other and to be safe. It's rough out here, and I don't want anything to happen to any of us. Although I know violence is running rampant. So be safe. Be safe, watch your surroundings, all of that stuff. Take care, and if I'm still around, I'll see you in the next video.